Hey everyone, it's JT and welcome back to another LinkedIn live stream. So glad to have you all here. Today I am going to be talking about salary negotiations, and I want to make sure that you can see my screen here. Really important conversation. We're going to talk about salary negotiations, not just when you're applying online in online applications, but also when you're in the actual job interview. But before I get started, I want to remind everyone we're live streaming on a whole bunch of different platforms today, but the only way you can get your questions answered live and in real time is if you are following me on LinkedIn. So just to show you how that works, head on over to the LinkedIn stream. I know my team is posting it in all of the live chats. You have to follow my actual profile on LinkedIn. So you have to go to my profile, hit the follow button. That's going to give you access to being able to ask the questions. You'll also then get instant notifications when we go live, which we do 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it'll be a great way for you to do that as well. But please, again, the only way you can get your questions answered is on the LinkedIn platform, and you have to be following me to do that. Alrighty, so let's go back here and get started. So excited to talk about salary negotiations. This is actually a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. Our Work It Daily members, you all know that we run the #1 career growth club on the internet, and our members are coached by a team of trained specialists, myself and the team that I've personally trained. And a very big part of the process as they're looking for work is salary negotiations. We take this extremely seriously. And the reason for that is that studies show that the more you can negotiate and get comfortable with negotiating over your career, the more money you'll make in your lifetime. And also the more satisfied you'll feel about the relationship between you and your employer. So you need to know how to do this effectively because, you want to build a win-win situation. Sometimes employers are in a position to give you more money. Sometimes they're not. But no matter what, you want to build a brand and make them aware of the fact that you are an earner and that you are looking to grow your career, and that as you grow your career, you're looking to make more money. So all of the techniques that I'm going to teach you today are going to help you set that expectation, that understanding around your brand for your business of one. Okay. So with that in mind, let's talk about some basics here. Really important stuff. First thing that I want you to know is you should never, ever, ever avoid or skip the question around salary. And this is pretty important because there are some career coaches out there, and I'm not going to name names, but there are some people out there that are getting a lot of attention that are saying, hey, companies don't have any right to ask you that. If they ask you what your salary requirements are, you say right back to them, I'll tell you what my salary requirements are once we've been through the interview process and we agree that I'm a fit for the role. Please don't do that. Please, I am begging you, don't listen to this bravado advice. I need you to think about this. You are a service provider. The employer is your customer. When that recruiter asks you for your salary requirement, it is because that recruiter's job and how well they're seen as doing their job is based on bringing candidates that match all of the criteria that have been set by the hiring manager. So when you disrespect a recruiter and say, I'm not going to answer that question, you are being disqualified. And in some cases, just so you know, blacklisted. So please don't listen to that advice. It doesn't work. I am telling you that right now. If a recruiter asks you for your salary requirements, you're going to need to give them. But it is all in the delivery of that and how you can open up that conversation so that you don't disqualify yourself. Now, I understand people are saying, but that's not fair. I feel like the recruiter gets the upper hand. They may be willing to pay me more money, but if I don't know that, I may negotiate a lower price. That's not true at all, folks. There is a way for you to have a very healthy and respectful dialogue with a business partner, because that's how you want to see this company, that allows you to both talk candidly and politely about your needs and to get to a financial win-win. But you've got to understand how to do that. So that's my first tip. Please don't skip it on a job application. People that leave things blank on a job application, you get disqualified. I don't think people understand that. When you skip fields on a job application, most of the ATS systems today automatically disqualify you. And I'm sure there are a lot of people right now going, okay, JT, I've applied to 100 jobs and probably skipped things on all of them, and that's why I'm not getting a call back. Yeah, it is. And it's unfortunate, but now you know. So you never, ever skip the salary question on an online application. You also never avoid answering the question in an interview. Okay? All right, wanted to make that point clear. Let's keep going. The second thing that I want you to know is that whenever possible, both online and certainly in an interview, but definitely online, you want to give a range if you can. So if it's an open field and it says you can put in a range, you want to put in a range. And the range is simply your walkaway rate all the way up to your ideal rate. So your walkaway rate is the least amount of money you're willing to accept that won't make you have to go looking for another job. You see what I'm saying? So you take the job because you're making money, but it's not enough money. So you're going to keep looking for a new job and you're going to ditch this job as soon as something better comes along. That's not a good idea. All of us have to set a rate. Businesses have to set a rate. I want you to think about this for a second. How would you feel if companies you worked for said, well, or if services you wanted to purchase, let's say you go out and they said, well, for you, I think it needs to be this amount. We wouldn't like that, right? We want to know the rate. Well, recruiters, hiring managers are the same way. Give yourself a rate. What is the least amount you are willing to make that you would stay in that job and you would grow your career if you got that pay? We all have that number, folks. It's the number that pays the bills, that covers our expenses, right? That we can afford to live on. You need to define that rate and put it in your range. Now, your ideal is what you'd love to make. The important thing here is to do your research. Don't ask for something unrealistic. You need to go and do your homework on various sites and figure out what a reasonable salary is for your level of experience, where you're living, because salaries vary deeply between, big cities versus rural areas, etc. You have to think about your industry and everything else. And you have to come up with a good, healthy, ideal salary that you want to make. That then becomes your range, and that's what you put in there. All right? And in doing so, you're going to cover your bases. Now, if they don't contact you because your salary is too low, that's fine, because you couldn't afford to take the job if it was any less than that anyways. But if you fall in the range, then they're going to at least take a look at your application, because somewhere in there is the rate that they've been given that they're told they can pay. So that's what you're looking to do there, okay? Don't try to game the system and say, what range can I put in to get a phone call? The range needs to be your personal walkaway for your business of one and the ideal that you want to make. End of story. Okay. That's the important thing. As you get better in your role, as you learn more about yourself and what you're worth, your range will get bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But for right now, you need to set a range, and everyone should do this exercise. This is something we make every single Work It Daily member do. We have an entire course on salary negotiation that takes them through how to do that, but you need to do it. Now, what happens when they only let you put in one number? So some applicant tracking systems will not allow you to put the range in. It will take just one salary. What do you do? Well, here's my advice in this situation. Look at your range you've created, find the midpoint, what's the halfway point between the two, and then take 10% off that. Go 10% lower. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that your salary gets somewhere within their place that they're looking for. If you've done your homework and you know your value and you know what you're worth, you're putting yourself on the slightly lower end of that, which is most likely going to put you in the right place for them. Okay. And now some people say, but wait a minute, JT, isn't that going to mean that I can't negotiate for more money later because I put the salary number in, they're going to hold me to it? No, this is just the online application. You got to get past the online application first. Once you get there and they call you, you're probably going to have a further discussion around salary, and we're going to cover that in a minute, okay? But right now, in an online application, our goal is to give them a number that we could accept, that is also within their range, okay? Very straightforward, very simple there. All right. Let's talk about interviews. Let's say you get past the online application now because you've put in a number and they contact you. They're usually going to ask you about salary, especially if they required it on the application. A lot of times a recruiter will say, so you said that you're okay with $40,000 a year. Is that true? All right. This is going to be your opportunity to provide a range. So again, we want to give that nice broad range. You'll be able to say, well, you know what? Your online application system only allowed me to put in a single number. So I did. But the truth is my range for the position is between this and this. And you're going to give them your walkaway rate all the way up to your ideal. Once again. Now, this gives you a chance to explain why, because you want to say that. I have a range and let me explain why. The range is really based on all the other aspects of the job, like the benefits and the commute and the career opportunities in the future and some of the other things that are involved. Not knowing any of that when I applied, I gave you a number that's within my range, but I certainly want to hear more about the opportunity in the event based on what I hear, it feels like I might need to earn more money to make it work. That is a realistic and honest thing. If two businesses were negotiating on some services, one would say, these are my rates. The other would say, what am I getting for that? And then they'd say, well, gee, I need more than that. And they'd say, okay, well, but if you need more than that, then I'm going to need to up my rates in order to cover the cost. It's a very normal dialogue that businesses have all the time. You need to do the same thing. You need to think like a business and say, well, here's the number, but it's going to vary based on your needs. This is a fair enough concern. At this point, if the recruiter says, look, I got to be honest with you, this only pays this. It is not going to be negotiable. This is what it's going to be at the end of this journey. If you're the one that we select for the job, this is the salary. Are you going to be okay with it? At this point, you do have to make that decision. Because if they're adamant that it's not going to change, then you are not going to be able to negotiate later on. So you need to say, gee, that's a great question. You know what? It falls in my range. Yes, I'll be okay with that. Because the truth is, if you get to the end and they offer you the job and you're not feeling good about it, you can say no. You can turn it down and say, I just feel like for the amount of work and what's going to be needed of me, that the salary isn't in alignment. I know that you'll find somebody that can, do the job at this rate. I totally understand it, but I feel like I'm going to let you down if I take it at this rate. Again, there's all this negotiation that can happen later on when you're sitting in the driver's seat and you've been given the job offer, right? But if they do ask you in the moment, hey, this is the highest number we can pay, are you going to be okay with that? This is why you do your homework and you have a range, because you're going to have to answer that on the spot. If you say, well, let's worry about that later when I get through the interview process, or you don't give them an answer, you will be disqualified. Because think about it. If that recruiter's been told this is the salary, it's non-negotiable, and they push you through to the finish line and then you start trying to negotiate, who's in trouble? The recruiter's in trouble. So you have to be respectful of that recruiter's job. And you have to understand that aspect of it. Now, look, all of us in life have been, gone to buy something and it's been too expensive in our minds. And we're like, I have a budget and I can't go beyond it. So sometimes we walk away and we go find something in our budget. And when we do that, sometimes it doesn't work out and we're like, darn it, I should have spent the extra money. Now I get why I should have spent more money. Well, employers are no different. In Work It Daily, I can't tell you how many times we've had said to somebody, look, hold fast on what you need. If it's not going to work, you need to walk away from this situation, because if you accept less than you feel you believe and you're not happy, that is going to show to the employer. And that's not going to create a great working relationship. And you're probably going to end up quitting or they're going to fire you. Whereas if you stand your ground and say, I just can't do the job for any less than this, and they go find somebody else, they'll either find somebody that'll work out, or, and I've seen this happen a lot, they come back and say, you know what? We did more interviewing. You are the candidate. We're willing to pay the extra. Now they are willing to pay the extra and they're okay with it because they've done their homework and they know that you're worth it. You can't just force that on them sometimes. Sometimes you need to let it play out so that your business partner can really understand and respect that what you're asking for is truly reasonable, right? And that's how good businesses of one run. They play the long game here. You're upfront, you're honest, you know your value, you're respectful in your negotiations, and you understand if they're not ready to commit, there's nothing you can do about that other than stand by your brand and tell them that you really do want to work with them and you understand that and you want them to find the right candidate, but you can't budge. Okay, so this is all things that are done when you learn how to coach and work through your salary. Now, if they push you for a number in the interview, right? Let's say you never had a job application. When they push you in the interview and they say, well, we need to talk salary now, and you give the range and they go, well, again, that range isn't good enough. You do the same thing. You say, all right, well, for this case, I'm going to say a little bit less than my midway point would be something I'm comfortable with. Does that work for you? At which point they might come back and say, nope, absolutely not. We need the most we can pay is this. And once again, you'll have a range and say, well, that's in my range. Okay, let's move forward. Or it's not in my range. I can't move forward. But you use these same exact techniques and you say to them, all right, this is it, but I have to tell you, and this is the big point. You want to say, I reserve, the right, or I just want you to know that we're really early in the process. So you've asked me what I'd be looking to make, and I'll give you this number, but that may change If I find out this job requires a lot more work than I thought, if it's a lot more expertise, if there's maybe benefits that aren't covered that I'm going to have to pay out of pocket, there could be reasons that I might come back to you in the end and say that I need more money. So you can be upfront at that point. You can tell them that and say, here's the number. I'll give you a number, but I can't make that my hard and fast number until I know more about the opportunity, right? So now you've given them what they needed. You didn't reject their request, but you were also upfront about the fact that when you get to the end of the process, if it really is a lot more than you thought, you may not be able to accept it at that rate. This has left the door open for discussion. And again, if the recruiter says, nope, it's not open for discussion, this is the rate that I have to get you at, this is what it's going to be, you will then make a decision to proceed or not. And you may say, okay, I'll do it. And you may get all the way to the end of the process and go, yeah, no, I can't do it. That will still be your prerogative. But these salary negotiations, these discussions, they need to happen because you can't move forward in the process unless they feel like you're within their budget. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. It's so important for you to know that. Now, let's talk about what happens if you get the lowball offer, because this is what comes up next. I've done this 1,000 times. I know what comes up. Okay, JT, I gave them my range and they literally came in at the bottom of my range. Now, that happens not as much as you'd think, though. I just want to tell people that. People are always so worried about the lowball offer. Most great employers I know, when they've fallen in love with you, they don't want you to be miserable. They want you to come in and be happy. They may have budget constraints, and usually when they do, they're really honest about it. Like, this is all we have to pay, but let me tell you about how we'll be able to get you more money down the line. Usually they're really trying to work with you, and you can sense that in an employer and a business partner. But if you get some company that literally is sort of flippant about it and only gives you the lowball offer, you can go back. You can go back and say, gee, this is really hard for me. Because it is, and I know most of us don't want to negotiate because we don't like it, but this is your business. You're going to put together a checklist and you're going to say, this is really hard for me because I'm excited about you all as an employer and I want to accept this job, but here's my challenge. The rate that you've offered me is just not enough for what I need. And let me explain why I think I could use more money, why I think I deserve more money. You're going to kind of work it out in your mind. Here's the checklist of things that I think that I would bring to the table that are going to create more value, because this is the important part, folks. When you ask for more money, it's now on you to justify financially how you're going to cover the cost of that. So, I'm going to have to do these things and that's going to help you, and these things and that thing and this thing. You want to explain how you're going to create value. You can't just say, wow, I really just need more money because I do. No one's going to buy that. You have to give them some valid reasons. So you want to work through a checklist with someone. This is something we do with our members. We say, okay, tell me about the situation. Why do you think you deserve more money? But now let's frame those in a way that says, these are how it's going to benefit you if you give me more money. And at the end, you say, for that reason, I was hoping you could pay me X. I know you can't answer me right here, but I wanted to put that out there and tell you that if the company could find its way to pay me this amount, I guarantee you I will exceed your expectations, and I will make sure that you are so glad that you did this and that you are getting the return on the investment. So you're making a claim, right? Just like any good business, they say, if you pay me this, this is what I guarantee you will happen. That's what's happening in this part of the negotiation. You are asking and providing your guarantee. You're asking for more money. You're providing your guarantee. Very important that you do this at this stage. All right. You've got to give the reasons why. Now, what if they say no? See, I can read your mind. I know what you're all thinking right now. What if they say no? If they say no, then this opens it up for a discussion around what is it going to take to get to yes. That's all it is. When you hear no, don't hear no, not ever, and get upset about it. Hear no, not today, not right yet. So this opens up the opportunity for you to say, okay, I know you can't pay me that now. I respect it. What's it going to take for me to be able to get there? What does that look like in your organization? And more importantly, what can I do? What can we agree to? What can we work on so that I can do it within the year? So this is where you're saying, look, instead of waiting for an annual review, I want to talk about how I can fast track and get there sooner. And something you can propose is, hey, can I have a 6-month review instead of an annual review? Can we look at 6 months? And if I have truly proven that I'm exceeding your expectations and I'm creating the value that you need to compensate me, that we can open up the conversation again about compensation and look at getting me to the number that I need to get at, right? And the reason this is such an important conversation is because if they said no, you need to know, is it no, not today, but hey, we're willing to look at it? Or are they really just saying no, not ever? In which case you may not want to take this job, right? So this additional conversation, this additional negotiation is very helpful for you. And if they're like, look, we just can't budget it. This is a set number for this type of position. You can ask for other things like, okay, would it be possible to get a little bit more vacation time? Or, can I work from home one day a week to cut down my commuting cost? There are things that you could open up and negotiate when they say no to your financial offer. Okay, so there's always a way to work through this and negotiate. And the more you do this, the more comfortable that you get. The most important thing I can tell you here is that, sometimes companies are very set in their budgets. And so having a conversation around what you can do to get there, do you really want to throw out a great opportunity? What if it's a great place to work? What if the people are awesome? The environment's great. It's less stressful. They've got some cool benefits and perks. You need to think about, hey, am I willing to trade off a little in salary because the quality of life I'm going to have by working here is worth it? So you have to be thinking about those things as you go through this negotiation process. Okay? Awesome. So there you have it. All the tips for negotiating. Here's the thing that I'm just going to close with. If you go through this whole process, hopefully you're working with our career coaches. We're making sure you're checking all your boxes. You get to the end and all that's there is a job that's below your walkaway rate. It's up to you to decide, but I will advise you 100% of the time not to take it. If a job is below your walkaway rate and they're saying they can't ever get you where you want to be, because it's a different thing if they're saying, hey, in 6 months we can get you there, or in a year we can get you there. That's a different thing altogether. But if they're saying, no, this is our rate, it's not ever going to change, and it is below your walkaway rate, it is not in your best interest to take this job, because you've defined your worth. You've set in your head what you need. And for you to go to this job and be unhappy about it is a problem. It's just going to bother you every day. It's going to show in your attitude and your approach to the work. Not to mention, you're going to keep looking for a job. We both know that. And then you're going to leave. And then this company is going to be really angry with you because they trained you, you agreed to a price, and then you walked off the job. If you've ever, I've heard so many stories of people who are building houses or doing construction on their house, and they hire a contractor, and the contractor is there for a while. And then all of a sudden the contractor stops showing up and walks out, leaves them high and dry. It's horrible. And they get bad reviews online. Well, the same thing's going to happen for you. Recruiters talk. And if you're in some industry, some circle, and you ditch a company because of this, just like this, it will come back to haunt you, right? This is a business partnership. You want to treat every employer that you work for from 2020 and beyond, like a business partner. And so if you decide and you commit to a job, then you're sticking with it. All right. So that's why you've got to make really good decisions around this. Okay. Does that help everyone? So let's stop there right now. And first of all, I want everyone in the comments. It would be great to hear just in your comments, what's the most important thing you heard today? What's the thing that makes the most sense to you when it comes to salary negotiation? I definitely want to see that in the comments below. Also, I love to hear where you're from, so be sure to put that in there too. And then I'm going to open it up for questions, just so you know. So make sure if you've got any questions, you're starting to put them in the chat. Once again, a quick reminder, I can only answer questions on LinkedIn, even though we're streaming on all the different platforms. So if you haven't come over to LinkedIn and followed me there, please do. That way we will be able to work together. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I am going to come up on screen here. And I'm also going to remind you all as I start to answer these questions really quickly that first of all, we have a ton of free resources. We refer to a lot of stuff here in the platform. We have all of our free resources in one place over at Work It Daily. So I've got the link going below. It's just workitdaily/resources. So if you're looking for certain resources, you will find them there, okay? And then the other thing I just want to tell you really quickly is that I am on TikTok and Instagram, and we're serving up all sorts of cool advice and information on both those platforms. So if you've got TikTok or Instagram, I would love to be friends with you. Please head on over to those platforms. It'll be very different from the stuff that you're seeing in LinkedIn. We've got, fun stuff going on TikTok, and we've got really cool tutorials in our IGTV. So head on over to both of those, okay? Awesome. All right. So now it's time to answer some questions. So let's see what we've got here today. So Bowen says, hey, Bowen, shout out to Bowen. I'm going to attend an interview soon, and they asked me about my expected salary, and I regret the salary I provided. What should I do? Yeah, that happens, Bowen. It's okay. So first of all, really prep for this interview, Bowen. It's very, very important that you nail your interview prep and that your questions are spot on and value add. So you've got to get them falling in love with you on this interview, Bowen, absolutely falling in love with you. And then what's going to happen is at some point in time, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions, say, do you have any questions for us? And you want to ask incredible questions too. And so if you don't know how to do that, make sure you head over to our resources page. We have really great interview question lists that you can use and prep. But you want to ask these questions because when you ask great questions, they show just how much you understand them and you get them. So once you've done that and you've really defined yourself and they say, hey, we're going to move you forward in the process. The next steps are we're going to move you on and have you talk to, the next person in the process or have you back for another interview. So once you've gotten the buy signal because you've crushed it in the interview, and that's a buy signal when they say you're going to move on in the process, that would be an opportunity for you to say, this is really hard for me. But I wanted to bring it up because before we go any further in this, I respect you all too much and I really admire the company. But, when you called me, I gave you a salary. And to be honest, I just was so excited about the opportunity. I wanted to make sure that I could be interviewed. But now listening to the job and knowing what's involved, I need to be transparent with you. I need to tell you that I would need to make at least this much. And that should be your real number that you need. Okay. And so you want to say that and go, again, I totally understand if as a result, you don't want to move me forward in the process. I just felt that I owed it to you to be honest and say the initial number I gave you, I really couldn't sustain or live on. And what I really need is this number instead. And I'll tell you, you could even take it a step further, Bowen, if you're comfortable and if you do your homework and say, I'm really looking to make more in the range of this or this. Because if you give a range, then you're not leaving money on the table. So you could say, I gave you a number and honestly, I lowballed myself truthfully to live and be comfortable and be able to do this job based on what I'm hearing now. I need to make between this and this, and depending on the benefits, et cetera. And so then you could throw your range out. Now that will really help you. And by being honest with them and showing that humility and that honesty and that accountability and saying, look, I own my actions. I was just so excited to meet with you all. I'm even more excited now, but it would be wrong for me not to have this conversation or to wait to the very end to do that. That wouldn't be right or fair. And so when they hear that, they're going to hear your character and they're going to know you're sincere. Okay. And then you got to come up with your range, right? Or if there's a number, but really work on that. Great question, Bowen. Danielle says, what do you do when you give a salary requirement, but you get into the position to the job description and the actual job does not match? Yeah. Hold on a second. I want to bring that up. That is so frustrating. I agree with you and not fair at all, Danielle. So the reality versus the expectation is clearly different. You are going to have to bring this up. And again, I keep coming back to this example that you're a business partner. So if you know in good faith you could not do this job at this rate, then you need to bring that up. But it's on you, Danielle, to explain why. And this is the part I think most people shy away from and why they don't do it. You need to sit down and say, okay, I wanted to chat with you because when we first described the position, I understood it to be these things for this salary. But now, and again, I'm really excited about the role and I'm excited about the company, but if I understand it, it also would require this, and this, which candidly is a much higher level of expertise and will take more time unless you know what you're doing. So it's a more complex role and requires more than the one that was initially published, based on what I see. Am I right? Am I seeing this correctly? Because you actually need them to say yes to that, Danielle. You can't just push that on them and say, hey, this isn't the job that you said it was. You need to give them an opportunity to say, we agree with you. And by the way, and usually what's going to happen, they're going to say, Danielle, you're right. In the beginning, we posted the job, we thought it was this, but now that we started interviewing people and we realize we're really going to need somebody to do all these things. So you need them, Danielle, and everyone else listening to this, you need them to admit that the job changed. You got to get that buy-in. That then opens the door for you to say, I totally understand. I know that happens. And the job as it sounds now is very exciting. That being said, I would really need to earn more in the range of this to this in order to justify that and this commitment. Would that work for you? So again, you're giving a range so you don't leave money on the table, but you have to be ready with a price. You can't just wait for them to come back with something. You have to go and start the negotiation by validating the fact that, yes, this was more than was described. And you do it in a really polite way. And you just say, look, I know these conversations are so difficult. It's hard for me in this situation, but I just have to be honest with you. Now that we both agree that this job is a lot more than what was first described, it's going to require a lot more. And so I would really be looking to make between this and this in order to do this job and exceed your expectations. How do you feel about that? As we talked about earlier, if they come back and say, no, it's not possible, you've got to make a decision. If you really love the job and you're willing to take it at the rate they said, then be at peace with that. But if not, please do not accept the job. It is the beginning of a disastrous relationship because right out of the gate, you're not feeling like it's equitable. So you've got to be thinking that through. And it's a great question, Danielle. It does happen all the time. You want to give the employer the benefit of the doubt by having that conversation and getting that validation and acceptance that, yes, in fact, it has changed. From there, you can start your negotiations. Awesome. Let's see. Shalette says, is it smart to accept a contract position for an opportunity when you have a permanent full-time position with benefits, but feel you're not getting paid and challenged enough? So Shalette, this is such a great question. And honestly, probably a topic for another day with all of you, which is what do you want to make? What do you think is fair? How much do you think you're worth? If you're sitting in a full-time job right now, paid with benefits, and you don't think it's fair, where are you getting that info? Just because you feel that way? Or have you done research? Do you have friends in a similar industry and they're saying they're making a lot more? Where are you getting your data? Because first of all, a lot of times people overstate what they're making to sound more important. So please make sure that you've got valid data that says, I am being underpaid in this role. Second thing, Shalette, is have you had a conversation with your current employer? I am amazed at the number of people that will come to me at Work It Daily and say, I want to leave because they're not paying me enough. And I'll say, well, have we had some career planning conversations with them? No, they should just know to pay me more. I've really given them my years and I'm a hard worker and they should know to pay me more. It doesn't work that way, folks. That is a really short-sighted look. And I don't think that you're doing that, Shalette, by the way, but it's very important for everybody to understand that. If you're sitting there with that employee mentality, like they should, because I work hard, you are literally not maximizing your potential in your career. You are a business of one. Own your business of one. If you don't feel your business of one is being fairly compensated, do your homework and prove why. And if it isn't, sit down with this company who you have a relationship with, who you've established trust and respect with. There's a saying in sales, it's much harder to get a new sale than it is to keep an existing one. Just change that out. It is much harder to get a new job than it is to keep an existing one. Same thing. So I would sit down with your boss and say, I love it here. I'm not feeling challenged. And in 2020, it's my goal to make more money. Can we talk about a strategy that we could come up with together that would enable me to make more money here and to take on some new challenges? What could that look like? You have to have that conversation. You owe it to yourself. Now, if they come back and say, nope, this is the only amount we're ever going to pay you, there's no growth in this job, it is what it is, then you have now been given the blessing to look for something else. And maybe a contract job that pays a lot, but you need to do your homework. You're going to have to pay the taxes yourself. You're not going to have any benefits. All of that. If you're willing to take a contract gig and you feel it's worthwhile, it's going to challenge you, it's going to pay you more, then yes, you would be well within your range to do that because you had tried to make it work with your current employer and you learned that it wasn't. This is basic business principles, Shalette. So you've got to do that research. You've got to have those conversations so that you can be at peace with whether or not you should take that contract role. Okay. And you can do it. I know that you can. All right. Let's see. One more question from, Robert. How do we start the conversation at $100K a year? Are the rules the same for high salaries? So, no, Robert, the rules are the same for any level salary. That's a great question. Any level salary, you want to have a range and explain that it's based on the opportunity and negotiate from there. And if your walkaway rate is 100K, then that's what it is. If it's 40K, then that's there. These business principles do not shift as you make more money. The one thing I will tell you is that usually as people climb the ladder and they get better at negotiating their salaries and they're making a six-figure salary, everyone's more comfortable and natural with the negotiation process. I find people that are making between $40,000 and $100,000 a year tend to be a lot more stressed out about having these conversations. So if anything, I would say you're just doubling down on this process and really looking at the customer, the employer, and saying, what are your needs? What are you going to need to fully justify and feel 100% confident and comfortable with paying me this kind of money? Because it's a lot of money. So what are you going to get in return? Now that's going to be on you. More than ever, you are going to have to prove your value and help them understand and make them see the kind of guarantee that you're going to give, right? So the interviewing gets more complex and the proving of yourself gets more complex, but the tactics, they stay exactly the same. That's the good news. Judy says, is it better to negotiate 10% less of the current market value, even if that's lower than your previous salary amount? So no, I mean, again, in every situation, Judy, you have to look at it and say, what are they offering? Does that work for me? Regardless of what I was making before, does this opportunity work for me? Because you might be coming from a hazard pay situation. There are a lot of jobs out there that pay well, but it's hazard pay. The conditions are horrible. The manager's awful. The environment's toxic. The benefits are terrible. The work is menial, whatever it is. There are companies that pay great dollars because they know their jobs and their environment are horrible. So if that's what you're leaving, then you may be completely comfortable with negotiating for less because of all of the upside. It's never just about salary. But again, you've got to do your due diligence and know about this company and figure out, is it worth it? Am I going to be comfortable taking less than because I see so much upside here? What if you're getting in there, but they are going to give you such incredible training and they're in such a hot industry and they've got such an incredible reputation that within a year, you could be making 40% more or double? Sometimes investing in yourself in terms of a working education and going someplace that's going to give you something amazing is worth taking a lesser salary than the one you have now. The other thing I'm going to tell you too, folks, and this is really important, is everyone should be doing a salary analysis on themselves. You are a business of one and you are a commodity. If you are not staying relevant and if your brand isn't the best it can be, then you are competing on price and someone's going to come along that can do the job better, faster, cheaper. So please make sure that whatever you're making for salary right now, you can 100% prove is valuable in the marketplace and that you could make that same money someplace else. Because if you are being overpaid right now, when a market correction hits, overpaid people are the first to go. Flat out. So please make sure, and I've seen this happen so many times. I've seen people climb in their careers, right? They're in their 20s and 30s and they're climbing their career and they get to a good place and they're making a good living and they say, this is great. But what they don't do is continue to grow their career. And I don't mean grow financially. I mean grow their career, grow their skill sets, grow their network, grow their brand. And then a market correction hits and now they're the overpaid person. And the company goes, wow, I could hire 2 people for the price of that person and get double the output. Let's let that person go. This is business. This is good business practices. Businesses are always trying to optimize their finances. And employees are the most expensive thing in any company's budget. So please make sure that you are in fact asking for a reasonable salary if you're negotiating right now. And if you're in a job right now, please make sure that that salary is relevant. Because again, you can overnight go from being right where you need to be salary-wise to being the overpaid person. And you've got a situation right now where millennials make up half the workforce, if not more, and Gen Z is coming right behind them. And they're all on this part of the curve. Meaning they're willing to do the work for less money because they're on the upward trajectory of their career. Versus if you're over 40, you're sitting right here. If you are not figuring out, if you are over 40 today and watching this and you are not figuring out how to grow your career, stay relevant, be a specialist, add value, then guess what you're doing? You're going down this side of the curve. And this is where you get pushed out. And I hear lots of complaints around age discrimination. It's just supply and demand, folks. It is the law of supply and demand. And the reality is there's more supply and not enough demand. And what you're asking for is pushing you down the other side of the curve. So salary is on you. Make sure you know truly what you're worth today, not yesterday, today. Okay. Awesome questions. Wow. So many good questions today. Let's see. Benjamin says, I completed a first interview. I have a second interview with the directors. The travel commute will be an issue, but the org seems to be worth it. Ideas for negotiation. Remote might be an option, but we haven't discussed it yet. We'll see. Benjamin, this is a classic case. This is where you now sit down, look at the opportunity, because no two opportunities are the same, folks. Continue to do an incredible job interviewing and getting them to say, you're our candidate. We pick you, because once a company picks you, you sit in the driver's seat. They don't want to go back and hire their second pick. They want their first pick. So at this point, you're going to be peppering into the conversation, like with the directors, I'm really loving this. The commute is definitely more than I expected. I am a little concerned about the commute, but gosh, I love this place. I'm so impressed with the people. I really could see myself here. So what you're doing is saying, I've got a challenge, but oh, you guys are awesome. So when it comes time to negotiate, you can say, hey, how do you feel about me working remotely 2 days a week to offset the travel time and I'd be able to put more time into the job? Would you be good with that? Right? Now you can use your negotiation tools, because all along the way, you've had an open dialogue, very positive, very polite, but an open dialogue about what's great about the company, but also what might be a potential challenge for you as a business partner. This is how we have to think, folks. And if you do this with positivity and humility, and you don't sound overly intense, you're just kind of stating the facts and you're giving them the vibe of, hey, I want to make this work. I want to figure this thing out. They'll play nice with you. That's the key. It's all in your delivery. And you get better and better at this the more you do it. Okay. Jim says, how wide should your salary range be? That's an awesome question. So in this case, Jim, there's no limit. I think it would be unrealistic if you said something like, I'm looking between making $40,000 and $200,000. Like that just sounds silly to me, right? But historically, the swing can be anywhere from say 20 to even 50 grand. Because if you break that out over a month, you're looking at, a couple $1,000s and higher. It could be that much bigger. So I wouldn't be shocked if somebody said, hey, I'm looking to make between 40 and 60. Or between 40 and 70,000. Something like that would not seem unrealistic to me. If I'm in the 100,000 mark, I might say I'm looking to make between 100 and 150. The range might get a little bigger because my base number is bigger. But again, you have to do what's right for you. What's your walk away? What's your ideal? Whatever that is, it is. And then it's going to be on you to sell it and explain it. So that's really the key there. Okay. So if you have this ideal rate that's $100,000 more, talk to them about why. What does that job look like to you? And why do you feel you're eligible to earn that? Because that's certainly the question they're going to ask. Like, Jim, where are you getting that you think you can make that kind of money? You've got to have the facts. So whatever you come up with these ranges, folks, you got to back them up. You got to absolutely back them up. The walkaway is easy. That's the least I can make and still be able to stay here. The ideal, that's what you got to do your homework. Awesome. Let's see. Lewis says, I have a fantastic offer, mid six figures. Good for you, my friend, for a candidate that is focused on an area of tech that the company is exploring. He has some concern that if he joins them and then the business changes its mind or they have unrealistic expectations in what he can achieve in too short a space of time. He has requested a minimum commitment clause be added to his contract, 2/3 years. I do understand this from his perspective, but I haven't seen this before. Is this something you're familiar with? Yeah, absolutely. This is actually very common. It's called a parachute clause. It's a parachute clause, very simple. He's saying, look, they're saying they understand that they need to invest in me, that they need to invest and it's going to take time. But I've seen situations where we get in and they suddenly decide it hasn't. So I want to know that if they change their mind, that no matter what, I'm going to get, X amount of money, which is essentially him negotiating his severance. That's what he's doing. They get a year into it and he's going to have to start over looking for a job. He's saying, you're going to owe me a year or two of severance. That's all he's doing. It's a severance, but he's framing it, and I really like it, into a commitment letter. So he's saying this is essentially a contract that you're going to honor, that I will absolutely be here and I will get paid for 3 years, whether you keep me or not. So it's his form of a severance, but he's framing it in the form of a commitment clause. It's actually very normal and happens at the higher levels all the time. Yeah. Karen says, can we ask to discuss salary early in the process if the employers don't bring it up? In my last job, they only told me after the offer stage. So Karen, awesome question. And we didn't cover this today. Asking in the first interview is a no-no. So if you're in the phone screen and they haven't brought up salary, I would not ask then. And people go, but wait a minute, JT, what if I go on the interview and then I find out it's not worth it? If you're really loving the company, you've done your homework and you're loving the experience on the phone with the recruiter, I think it's worth your time to schedule that interview. If you get there and find out, gee, they're way out of your ballpark, they got face-to-face time with you, that gave you a chance to really form an impression and show them how great your brand is. So that, again, if they say, well, we can't afford that, you can say, I understand. I love you guys. If you change your mind, I wanted you to meet me. I just want you to know I could do this job if it was in, more in my salary range. That's how you start to nurture relationships, because then they go out and they shop around and they're like, gosh, we really want Karen. Let's make the budget. And now they're going to pay you because they understand the value. So this is why I would never ask in a phone screen, and I would get to the face-to-face interview stage. Now, let's say you get through the interview stage, that first interview, and it's looking really good. You wait for a buy signal, which is they're like, oh, Karen, we're bringing you back for the next round. Like, we need you to come back and meet the directors before we make an offer. That would be the great time to say, I am so excited about this, but here's the thing. I was hoping we could talk salary a little bit because I'm very much into you as well, but I would hate to waste their time. I would hate to put them through that interview process if I wasn't able to accept the offer. Could you give me a range for this position? See, so now you've invested. You went through the phone call with them. You came and did the on-site. It's clear they want to move you forward. You're saying, I want to be respectful of your time. I don't want to waste anybody's energy. Can we just talk salary range to make sure it's in the ballpark of what I would need to be able to move forward? And you're letting them give a range so that they're not hard pressed for a number, so that you can find out whether or not it falls in the range or not. Okay. That's what I would do. That's when I would do that, because you're right. You don't want to get to the end and it's not a fit and you're frustrated. You want to get right in that sweet spot where it's clear they're pulling you through to the final stages. So now's the time to have that exploratory conversation. Okay. But you never ever, and I did an article about this, you never ask in the first session. You got to get some face time. You really do. You got to get some face time. You got to earn credibility, earn the opportunity to say, hey, I got to make sure this is in my ballpark. All right. Awesome. Okay. So I've got time for one more question today. So Amrish says, when I'm asked about salary expectations, I usually respond with, I'm glad you asked, what's your range for this role? Then they give me a range. Perfect. I'm within the range, or I don't give an actual number. So Amrish, you can absolutely do this. I'm going to be honest. It annoys recruiters. I'm just going to be honest with you. Recruiters don't like being responded to when they ask a question with a question. They don't like it. So if you do that, that's fine. But I just want you to know that kind of tweaks them a little bit. You'll also find a lot of times if you say that's within my range, then fine, then you're now going to be held to whatever they said. So you will not be able to negotiate later because you've just accepted that it's within the range. So I personally am not a fan of this because it makes recruiters feel like you're trying to switch things up. But if it's working for you, go for it. I just, again, understand that in the back of their mind, they're a little twerked that you asked a question and are trying to play the game a little bit, So I'm more comfortable with giving the range and going from there. But totally your call. If it's been working for you, hey, stick with it. That's all you got to do. Awesome. So not everybody's really comfortable doing that as well. And I don't like to recommend if people aren't comfortable with that. Okay. Look, folks, I can't believe how many questions were here. I wish I could answer more for you, but let me explain something. If you would love every single one of your salary questions answered, in fact, if you would love every question you've ever had about the job search process and what you're going through answered by a professional career coach, you can do that. It's called Work It Daily. That's what we do every single day. We are an online platform. We have our very own phone app. You sign up. It's a monthly subscription. It's super inexpensive. I promise you. It's literally for a couple cups of coffee a month. I am not kidding you, right? Less than $20 a month. You could have your own career coach. You can work with us. We can answer your questions in our private chat. We have all the video tutorials that teach you how to do everything that I taught today and then some. This is the stuff that nobody teaches you in school. So we built the program to do that. It's like having a gym membership for your career. So if you have not checked out Work It Daily and you loved what you heard today and you thought, gee, I really wish I could just have these questions answered privately whenever I want to, that's what we do. And I would really love it if you would go over there and check us out, because we are changing the game in the career coaching world. There was a time where the only way you could work with career coaches is if you had hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. You had to set an appointment, go meet with them. It was very unproductive. But we've taken technology and flipped it completely on its ear. Now you can get career coaching in real time on demand. And you can do it in a way that is so cost effective. In fact, if you sign up for our annual subscription, it's even cheaper. For $99, you literally can have a whole year of career coaching at your fingertips. So if you've ever thought you wanted a career coach, now's the time to go over and check out Work It Daily, because we are changing the game and we are so affordable. We're cheaper than your gym membership. And we're going to help you get a job and earn more money. So it's even better. Okay. Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, I'm thrilled you stopped by today. Listen, come back tomorrow. Tomorrow's topic is going to be answering that dreaded interview question. Tell me about yourself. We're going to get into a whole dialogue around that. So come back tomorrow. And again, as long as you're following me on LinkedIn, maybe you'll get your questions answered in the chat. But if you always want your questions answered, sign up for Work It Daily. Come see what it's like to have a career coach. Career coaching is a path to greatness. It's not a sign of weakness, and everyone deserves one. Okay. Awesome. All right, you guys. Thanks again. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.